One of the reasons I became interested in the skill of communication is because I found it so difficult to tell people when they were wrong. And I came across this book called Difficult Conversations. It's written by a group of people who were involved in negotiating the end of the Iranian hostage crisis. They were involved in negotiating the end of the Cold War, and they were also involved in negotiating the end of apartheid. And I thought, well, if anybody's had difficult conversations, it's probably this group. And one of the things that really struck me about the book, in a way, was a little disappointing, because where I'd really been hoped to suddenly find myself with the eloquence and the skill to tell somebody that I was right and they were wrong, that I really had a handle on this and they didn't. That one of the things that came out of the book is that I wasn't maybe always as right as what I thought I was, and I wasn't necessarily as clever as I thought I'd been, and the other person maybe wasn't quite as wrong as I thought they'd been. And that's really one of the first principles of difficult conversations, is that often the reason why the conversation is difficult is not because I lack the skill, it's because I'm giving the wrong message. And when I find myself in a situation where I think I'm right, you're wrong, I'm clever, you're not, that's probably the wrong message. And were I to gain a better perspective on this, were I to gain a better understanding of the fact that you have a valid opinion, I have a valid opinion, or that your opinion is based on a certain set of observations and my opinion is based on a different set of observations, if I could come to a point where I understand that our differences of opinion are probably more due to differences in perspective rather than differences in intelligence, that message is going to be an easier one to communicate. So that was the first thing I learned about communication, is often conversations are difficult because we're trying to say the wrong thing. There's another lovely book called Crucial Conversations, which lays out quite a clear strategy for step by step how to go through these difficult conversations that you plan to have. The third book that I would say is groundbreaking in terms of how to have difficult conversations is actually not a conversation book. It's a book about marriages, and it's this one. It's a book by John Gottman called The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. It's a profound book. It's the best book on relationships that I've read. John Gottman can do a couple of things that are a little bit stunning. The first is, after watching a couple interact for less than 20 minutes, he can predict with 90% accuracy whether they're going to get divorced or not. The second thing that he can do is, in the first 30 seconds of an argument, he can predict how that argument is going to end. And that one's actually easier than it sounds, because arguments end how they begin. And the principle that I think is important to take out of this book is that communication gets a whole lot easier when relationships are strong. And John Gottman says that there's 7 principles for making marriages work, but it actually applies to all relationships. That we need to know each other. We need to admire each other. That, you know, we've all got a whole range of qualities, some more admirable than others, but we need to find those qualities in other people that we particularly admire. That's going to make the relationship stronger. We need to turn towards each other rather than against each other. We need to understand that we're on the same team. We need to allow ourselves to be influenced by each other. Obviously, in any relationship there are going to be problems, and we need to solve those problems that we can, but there's some problems that sometimes just can't be solved, and we need to overcome the problems that we can't solve. And finally, we need to find meaning in relationships. We need to construct something bigger than just necessarily what I want or what you want. Together we can make this into something bigger than the sum of its parts. And those are the 7 principles of making marriages work, but that can be applied in working relationships also. And when I have a strong relationship with somebody, it makes it so much easier for me to communicate those tough things. But in addition to that, there are communication skills. Difficult conversations are when opinions vary, the stakes are high, and emotions run strong. One of the ways in which I like to think about conversations is I like to think that when a conversation is going well, you're on an island. When a conversation is going badly, you're in the sea. One of the mistakes that people tend to make when a conversation is going badly is they keep trying to press home their point. They keep trying to convince somebody of what they're saying. But really, and this is kind of skill number 1 of the conversation, is when you're on the island, everything's fine. When you're in the sea, Stop trying to make your point and just concentrate on getting back on the island. And the key identifier that you're on the island is the notion that you have mutual respect and mutual purpose. When you feel that I respect you and I feel that you respect me, and when we both feel that we want the same thing, the conversation is going well, the conversation is safe. But when I feel that you are suspecting me of being ignorant, incompetent, or even downright evil, or you suspect something similar, then we're in the sea. And that's when things go silent, we get withdrawing, we get sarcasm, we get avoidance, or that's when things even become conversationally violent, that we get controlling, we get labeling, and we get attacking. And once we're in the sea, we need to know how to get back on the island. There are 4 particular skills of that. There's regaining perspective, there's contrasting between what I meant to say and what was heard, there's just classic apology, I shouldn't have said that, I was wrong, and finally there's commitment. There's saying something like, we don't seem to be making any headway here, but I'm going to hang in until we do find a solution to this. And once you're back on the island, you can start to use a couple of skills to make sure that you're hearing the other person's perspective, you know what they are seeing, but at the same time you're not being a walkover, you're also able to portray your own point of view. So the conversation workshop is a one-day workshop designed to introduce you to the skill of difficult conversations. One of the funny things about crucial conversations is that they happen more than once. Because if we were going to have a conversation and resolve it, we wouldn't need to have it again. But it's the ones that we don't manage to resolve that keep on cropping up again and again. And in some ways, that's actually an advantage because we know this conversation is going to come up again. It means we can prepare for it. The next time we can be ready, we can do a better job.